Is that?
Okay. All right, now I gotta look around the camera. All right, this is just a 10-minute crash course in Fusion. Okay, so I'll just start up here. Of course, the device hub. I think you guys are familiar with this. You have your list of devices up here that you can add. So things like stages, cameras, dragonflies, and each device will usually have, you can either find it automatically or find it manually. So for example, if you know the COM port, you can just add it in and then click add. You can remove devices from your configuration just by clicking the little minus sign. You get a little blue dot when it's connected. When it's connecting, you get a green or an orange. And if there's a problem, you get a red dot. Okay, so here for fun, I've got a stage connected, an ILE, a dragonfly, and a dummy camera. So this won't give us any real images. I've got your username up here. There's a link to Fusion Help, which if you click this should open the website. Let's see if that works. Okay, it's trying to open Firefox. And here's the public Fusion manual, I guess. Okay, so that's there. Okay, before I go to imaging, I'll show you the Preferences tab because for optimum display and rendering of 3D objects, there's a combination of preferences and settings that you need to set. So just trying to remember, like rendering. Okay, so there are rules for setting what the rendering rate and the memory should be as well. So the texture memory limit. I'm not going to set those right now, and the GPU limit as well. So they're specified on the help page for Fusion. But if you're using a proper workstation and you don't want any sort of slow rendering artifacts or strange things appearing on the screen, you got to set those. Everything else is pretty standard here. The one other thing that's hidden, so if I hover over the About button and I click it and then move my mouse up and then release and I type in one word, upward movement, you'll see now I have this I've got these additional things that popped up here, like the debug options and things like that. So this is sort of like a hidden mode, which also allows you to add channels automatically. And to get rid of it, you do the same thing. You click, you hold it, you let go, and you would type upward movement again. Anyways, I'm going to keep it on for now. Okay, so let's go imaging. And let me just close this. Okay, so the standard screen looks like this. You've got on the right what they call the remote panel, which is just sort of the basic stuff you need to actually do imaging. And then if you want to control channels and settings related to the devices, you have to open up this side panel here, which can be open and closed like that, right? So if I go live right now, I've just got the dummy camera giving me some images of nothing, really, right? This is just imaginary circles. So here I can control focus of the stage, and I believe I can also pan left and right with this joystick. So the real physical hardware joystick does the same thing. If I click here, I should be able to pan, although I don't think this feature is working unless you calibrate the stage. Okay, but that's what it would do. You click this button, then you get really fine motion of the stage, although it doesn't really give that impression here, but that's what it says. If you're doing a protocol, it would show up here. So you can click here to define a protocol, and that will just open up the protocol section over here. I'll come back to that. let me just talk more about the stuff at the top here. So live stop obviously starts and stops the live preview. Snap is a single image. Okay, and then below that you've got, it says active channel or protocol channels for the live or snap. So it just gives you the ability to define, if you've got a bunch of protocol channels set up, you can view the live screen with those, but you can have a different active channel as well. Okay, so it's just a way to select between those two. You can also choose your channels here. Okay, so this is analogous to IQ. If I want to, let's see. Okay, we haven't really defined channels yet, but you can sort of add and subtract channels from the list here, right? So I add this in, it's now a protocol channel. Okay, and you can see that up here. If I don't want it to be a protocol channel, I remove it. Okay, then manage channels does the same thing, it opens up this panel. Okay, and then just below that you've got your exposure and your EM gain. Okay, so now let's talk about all the other features. Okay, so you have 4 tabs at the top: channel manager, protocol manager, analysis tab, and deconvolution tab. Okay, I'm not going to talk about deconvolution today. That's a whole other video in itself. But let's start with channels. Okay, so if you want to create a new channel, you would click here, give it a name, a color. You could give it a little description. You associate a camera with it and an imaging mode. And I'll talk about imaging modes in a second. Since we're in the advanced mode of the preferences, which I showed you, that sort of hidden mode, you get this button which says create default channels. And if you've got a Dragonfly connected and all of its filters are defined, this button will automatically create confocal, turf, wide field channels in a nice methodical way with names that make sense. Okay, and you can hide and display these extra features of the channel here. If you want to copy a channel, okay, so now I've got copy of channel 2. I can change a feature of it. I could, give it a different imaging mode or change the camera associated with it. If you want to delete a channel, you just click the little trash can. So get rid of that. You sure you want to get rid of it, delete. Okay, and then the idea behind this U-shaped arrow here, it's supposed to be, left side is sort of channel features that relate to excitation, and right side is channel features that relate to emission. And then below that you have what's called global settings. Okay, so this is a feature of IQ, is this distinguishing idea of channel settings and global settings. So global settings, like the name implies, are things that apply to every channel that you can control. Channel settings are parameters that are unique to the channel. Okay, and like in IQ, Fusion allows you to define whether a parameter is a channel setting or a global setting, and I will show you how you change those. Okay, so just the last thing at the bottom here in the channel manager, you've got all your devices connected again here, so it shows you what's connected. When you activate a protocol, you get a sort of timing progress bar, okay, and you can toggle between those while you're running a protocol. Okay, so like I said, you've got a few things right now that are defined as channel settings, and you got a few things that are defined as global settings, and we'll come back to what's what. Okay, so right up here in the corner, you have this other square here, which takes you to what's called the imaging mode manager. Okay, so it's like a tab within a tab. Okay, so it's here where you define what's called an imaging mode. And what that mainly is, as you can see here, are properties of the imaging mode of the Dragonfly. Okay, so we can, if I click spinning disc confocal, it takes me to the spinning disc confocal mode, and if I click edit settings here, so even though I call the modality a spinning disc confocal mode, I actually have to click here and say, okay, it's a confocal mode. And now you can hear it moving, right? And I also have to say what output port is associated with that. Okay? And maybe I want it to be a wide field mode. So it's a little bit kind of strange in the way that you kind of have to associate the thing twice with itself, right? So you want these to match each other. And then of course you would click save. Okay? So I admit that that's a little bit confusing why you have to do that. Okay, and then down below is where, if you click unlock, this is where, again, left side excitation, right side emission. So you see confocal unit here, confocal unit here. These are excitation properties. And just like these symbols up here, so the three circles say I want to make this parameter a channel feature. The little globe means I want it to be a global feature. The three bars with the sliders mean I want it to be an advanced setting, and we'll get to that in a moment. Or I can make it part of the imaging mode. Okay, so you have tremendous freedom to set what these things are. In some ways that can be confusing because certain things should naturally be channel settings and certain things should naturally be global settings and certain things should be naturally advanced and imaging mode settings. So I would tend to just go with the default settings. The only thing I really change is the image splitter. I make the image splitter associated with the channel. And that will make sense when you go to actually set up a Dragonfly for the first time. The image splitter should be associated with a channel because the channel also tells you which camera is part of it as well. Okay, so when you create those default channels, it gives you both the Zyla and EMCCD camera versions of the channel if you have those two cameras connected. Okay, so I think that makes sense. Okay, so you can lock that again. All right, and then this third little one here is the advanced settings tab. So same thing again, under advanced settings, you've got excitation properties on the left, emission properties on the right. And so these are typically things, what I would do is assign any parameter to an advanced setting is something that you rarely change, basically. And so where people get lost is usually figuring out where the hell is that parameter that I'm looking for, right? So you have to start looking here, here, is it in here, is it in here? And my response to that is, well, if you set it up initially correctly, meaning define what you want to be a channel parameter and a global parameter in the first place, then you won't have that problem each time you start and stop Fusion. They'll be where you want them to be. And I would say, you know, remove the things you don't want here, right? If you don't think you're going to be doing frame averaging or predefined areas of interest, go hide them in the advanced settings so that they don't clutter up this window. Okay? Right. If you're not sure what something is, if you hover over it, it will tell you what it is. And again, I would refer people to James Wainwright's wiki and the Fusion help guide to understand what these things do and how you should set them. Okay. The last thing, okay, so let's go. So this is all channel stuff and sort of state of the system stuff. This thing is the protocol manager. So if I click new protocol, I have to tell what type it is, right? So just like from IQ, I could do a time lapse, I could do a Z scan, I can do a multi-field, I could do a multi-field without Z. If I do a Z scan, it can also have time lapse, right? So as soon as you choose one, you get all these other features that you can define. Okay, so like any protocol, you have to say first what channel you're going to use. So I'll just add a channel in there. And now when I go over here, protocol channels, it's referring to this. So these are pretty self-explanatory, right? You know, how many repeats do you want to do? Do you want to set an interval between repeats? You can hide that. Z-scan settings, right? So you define your start and end. You can say, do you want to do start and end, or do you want to define a center and its size? So that's similar to IQ as well. You can say for each Z point, acquire all channels, or do each channel then do all the Z in one channel, then go back and do all the Z for another channel. So that's pretty straightforward. If you've got a piezo stage, which we do in this case because it's an ASI stage, it's automatically on. If you're using a microscope which has a motorized stage as well, you can select whether it uses the piezo or not. Okay, if you're doing stitching, that's what montage is for multiple fields. So, you know, here it's set for 3x3. Drift stabilization, that's just, you know, how often are you checking the focus. So you can turn it on and off, and you can say, you know, every 10 stacks, check the focus, reset it if necessary. Right, so you have a lot of options here. And image processing, do you want to do deconvolution while you're imaging or not, right? And then protocol loops, that's kind of like repeat the whole thing. So like if you're doing like overnight imaging and you want to do the same protocol once an hour, you would set it here, right? And below that, I guess you can import settings for a protocol from any old image that you acquired before, and you can also export your protocol settings as well. And when you're ready to go, you click acquire, and you'll get your the result of your protocol acquisition. Okay, Fusion gives you some basic analysis tools like line profiles, histograms, and through series analysis. To be honest, I don't use those. I use ImageJ. Okay, so I'm not going to get into deconvolution. The last thing I'm going to just talk about are the warnings tab and the file manager. Okay, so file manager is just like from IQ. So you can sort by date, file name, size, time points, slices. You can display as a list with details, or just thumbnails. Okay, I think everybody mostly likes this view. Double click to show an old image. Come back to here. View image details. Okay, so I guess all the image metadata you can view by clicking that button. Open an Amaris. If you've got Amaris connected, you can do that from here. And export, you know, will allow you to export in the following formats. So IMS file, bitmap, TIFF, open microscopy environment, TIFF. There is currently there's a bug with that. So if you export as an OME TIFF, it won't open properly in Fiji. So use the regular TIFF. The advantage of OME TIFF is that it saves a stack as a single file. If you've got a stack and you export as a TIFF, it exports every individual frame. So that can be annoying. In terms of what name you're going to get for a file, it's actually defined up in preferences. So when you click File Manager, you can define your root folder where things are going to get saved. That's usually set to be the image drive. So here it's C drive, but if we're on a proper workstation, this would be the image drive. You can define, you know, whether it creates subfolders or not. I think the default of daily is pretty good. You can give a prefix, a date, time, a user. If you put a prefix, you can define what that is. So this is really where you name your files right here. So just turn those all back on. Right, so it gets pretty long. I typically turn off the user and the time, but the date is pretty handy. You can turn on and off the write directly to file. I would say generally you want that on. Okay, and there's other features there. Let's go back to imaging. I don't think there's anything more to say about that. And then of course you get your errors and warnings here. So previously we had a Xyla connected, and now it's saying where is it? That's all that warning is. If you've got something that makes your protocol impossible, you'll get an error here. So it's saying something that I can't use drift stabilization when it's not available. So what I got to do is go and turn that off. So turn it off and that disappears. Okay, so it's kind of a handy little window. Usually it's just telling you your camera's still cooling and things like that. Any other questions? It's good. Okay. And that might actually be useful for other people, so we're going to save this and post it on Dozuki. Okay, see you later. Bye.